Hello and welcome to GryphonArt. Today I'm in festive mode, so I thought that I would show you how to reproduce this particular napkin fold that resembles a bit of an elf's boot when done in certain colours, and so it's probably quite pertinent as Christmas is approaching. Now, although it does look to be quite a complex fold, I'll just show you the finished aspect on all sides. It actually is very straightforward, so please don't be put off thinking that you won't be able to do it. If you're new to napkin folding, you'll be surprised. Do have a go. Now, these two examples here have actually been made out of a standard paper serviette, which is in the region of 16 inches square when fully opened out. Although, as I have mentioned in a previous video, napkins are rarely square. I have also folded this napkin fold in an Egyptian cotton napkin. This one, when fully opened out, is about 18 inches square. And you can see, if I put these side by side, that you're ending up with a significantly bigger end result. Now, just before we start to fold our napkin, for your additional information, this is actually quite a traditional napkin fold. It was certainly around in the early 1900s and is officially called the slipper fold, and perhaps you can see that it's almost a medieval slipper shape. Okay, so let's get started. Now, I am going to be using a paper napkin for the purposes of this video today because I can form the creases very readily without the use of an iron. I do tend to use my iron and ironing board when I'm working with fabric napkins, and if you are using napkins that are soft cloth, you may find that you need to apply some form of starch to stiffen them up. Although, having said that, this fold holds fairly well anyway, so it's trial and error. So, paper napkins come folded into quarter, but for the purposes of those of you who are starting with a fabric napkin, you will be commencing with a single flat sheet. So I've opened this one out so that we can reproduce that scenario. So the first thing we're going to do is fold our napkin in half so the corners and sides meet, and then you'll form that crease if you've got your fabric napkin, because you're going to need to identify where that is in a moment. Once you're happy with that, open up your napkin again. Now, we're going to use this line here in order to position this front edge of our napkin, and we're just going to fold that up to that center line and that crease that we've just formed, and then make sure that is firmly put into place. We're now just going to repeat that to the other side. So if I move this forward so that you can see it, this is our other edge. We're just going to fold that into the center as well. Okay, form that nicely as well. With that achieved, we're now just going to fold the whole thing in half. So these two fold edges, bring them both together. In fact, and just turn that down as well so that that fold edge is towards you. So those two folds are towards you, and you've got the single edge at that point. We then back to folding in half again, so we simply take that and bring the ends here so that they're meeting, and form that fold at this central point here as well. And we're just forming a crease. We're needing another guideline at this stage, so just make sure that that's neatly in place. Okay, so now we open that up. We've got our crease line in the center here, and that's our guideline at this point. All we're going to do is take this corner and bring it down so that you're looking to get this edge here meeting up with this crease line. So you're simply folding the same way that you would, in a way, paper aeroplanes. That often the paper aeroplanes started a bit like that, didn't they, years ago? So there we go. Now we're going to repeat that to the other side, and I just want to give you a little tip here as well. Because this is now starting to build up a bit of bulk, I tend to leave a gap in the middle section here, because these edges have got to come together, and if you don't leave a gap, it tends to bulk even more. So just leave a little bit of a gap. This is the point of your boot, so it will mean that it's less pointy at the end, but actually I find it beneficial just to leave that gap so that when we come to fold this in half, there is room for the bulk of material to move into. Right, so we're still aiming for a symmetrical pattern at this point. So at this point, it's this edge here that needs to meet up with this edge here. So we're simply going to fold that. You might need to sort of encourage that fold a bit more, because again, we are starting to deal with some bulk of fabric here. Okay, so that's what you've got now. You're just bringing that down to there, and we're going to duplicate that to the other side. Again, leaving a bit of a gap, because otherwise you're going to end up with difficulties when you come to the next phase. Alright, so I'm just going to hope that you can sort of see what shape you're aiming for there. Now at this stage we are folding this in half completely. Okay, and this is where I hope you can see that without that gap in the middle, you'd have a much more difficult time trying to fold that in half. And I'm hoping that you can begin to see that slipper forming. This is going to be the front of your slipper here. Okay, now at this point we are deciding which boot you're making, whether it be a right or a left. So, you know, if you make your first one this way, so you're just, the next thing that we're doing is we're sort of creating a fold here. So what you're doing is you're taking this line here and you're turning it underneath. I hope you can see that. So it's going, can you see what I'm doing? It's going underneath, and you're bringing this edge up as far as it will go so that it gets into this corner here. Right? I hope you can see that okay. Can you see how that boot is starting to take shape? So do draw this in as close as you can to this point here. That's that line. It's almost a triangular line that you're creating here. Okay, and actually if you can see this edge here, it's almost lining up with that, and then you just need to press that down. Now this, I believe this one might be making a right boot. If you then want a pair, you need to just do that with the opposite side instead. So you just, at this point, instead of working with this flap, you work with the other one and just do it the other way around, and that will give you a pair of boots. So I'm just going to leave that so that you can have a look at that. Second. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, we've got this little triangle here. Now we're going to fold this fabric over, but the first thing we need to do is get it to a size where it's going to fit. So this flap here needs to be folded down. So just fold it down and press it. So let me bring that up for you to see. It's just folded into a little triangle, and you want it to fold quite a bit down here because it's got a long way to go to be tucked under here, and you don't want any of these edges showing. So just make sure I've got that down, and then all you're doing is you're bringing that around here, and if it's helpful to you, just, you know, form this this end first. Apply pressure here to form that end. That might help you. So this is the sort of thing that you're aiming for, but we're going to tuck this edge underneath this section here. So just underneath this little section. So if I do that for you, just sort of ease it in. And once you're happy that it's in place, just apply some pressure, and you can see that your boot is starting to form now. So we've got just the top edge of this to form now, so we're just gradually going to very gently encourage these sections down. So you might, this is a little bit fiddly, you're just turning it inside out and gradually bringing it down over the sides of the boot shape. Just straighten that out a little bit. fiddle until you're ready with a result that you're happy with, really. So there you go. That's the top of that formed. So the only thing that we now have left to do is to curl the end. And all you need to do there is just apply a little bit of pressure about that at that point and just curl it round. You know, you can do that as much or as little as you like. If I turn it on its side, you might see a little bit better. And that's basically that one finished. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, just as a finishing point, you can see that this is really a right boot. That would probably be on the right hand side. Now, if you were to reproduce that exactly the same, you would just end up with two right boots. So at that point that I mentioned, you just need to swap over to the other side so that you end up with this flap being on the opposite side, and it's just at that point where I mentioned in the video that you were making a choice over whether it was a right or a left boot. So, you know, I hope that's of some help to you. So I hope that that's enough information for you. Now, I have created a free downloadable PDF document that gives you this step-by-step instruction. So if you want to make use of that, just go to my website at GryphonArt.co.uk. I will leave a link to both my website and to this PDF document in the description area for this video. Okay, well, that's the end of that instruction. It's just a little bit of festive fun. I hope you enjoy creating that napkin fold yourself, and as always, thank you very much for joining me today.